What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Ben on Sports. And today, as you can see, it is another weekly NASCAR episode. Eventually, I promise I'll interrupt the streak. We're on a very long streak of just NASCAR. I try and move it around, but there's not a whole lot going on anymore. I have baseball, and there will be a baseball episode coming soon. But until that time comes, you guys are stuck with NASCAR. Maybe I have some other things coming down the pipe. Maybe I don't. But this is week 18, week 17 if you don't include the all-star race of the NASCAR season, and we are going into Pocono. Let's get into it. Here, as always, are the storylines, and what a big surprise. Shane Van Gisbergen wins at Mexico City, a first-time road course, a little bit of rain. Where have we seen that movie before? Shane Van Gisbergen, SVG, with a nice drive, pretty much dominated, especially in that last stage, locking himself into the playoffs. And I'd say the playoff picture's kind of upended even more so. It wasn't really too bad before. Now there is only 6 drivers making it on points, and 2 of the drivers have at least 100-point leads on the cut line. So now there's 4 drivers in reality making it on points, but there's still plenty of opportunities for new winners. But when the guy who's 30th in points wins the race, that's what's going to happen under this playoff format. Yeah, that's kind of where we stand. It was, again, Shane Van Gisbergen, uber talented on these road courses. Road course ringer, right? I mean, you could argue that's why he has a job, still leaving a lot to be desired on a lot of the ovals. But phenomenal drive, deserves all the credit. Looked like it was a pretty good event in Mexico City this weekend, pretty decent turnout. Also, dealt with some rain, but I think that's normal for this time of year. I think it was overall a good event, sans a couple of outside of the track things that happen from different voices and everything. And I think NASCAR is probably already planning to go back, very interested in going back. Getting new fans that have never seen a race live in person to come out, getting new sponsors that have never sponsored, and really just kind of trying to bring NASCAR to more people in a new type of event. Who stood out last weekend? Well, obviously, I just said Shane Van Gisbergen dominated. Christopher Bell had a good weekend. Michael McDowell with a top 5 finish, getting lots of points, making up towards the playoff cut line. And if he keeps bringing speed, he might win one of these road courses before the playoffs and really continue to upend this. But he can still make it on points, even though this Van Gisbergen moves the cut line this win pretty significantly for a lot of people, which is going to make it harder for some of these fringe guys to make it on points, but still not impossible. I think there were some great drives from guys that got stuck in the back and moved forward. William Byron and Bowman had good top 10 days. Chase Briscoe went a lap down multiple times, got involved in a wreck, got penalized, drove all the way back up into 7th. Maybe that's a good sign for that team. It seems as if Joe Gibbs builds some fast cars. Christopher Bell was up there. Ty Gibbs was really fast until that third stage caution. A lot of drivers that needed some good runs, I think, had good runs in Mexico City. We have more Hocevar Stenhouse drama. I'd be watching Pocono for no other reason than to, see if Stenhouse finally takes his revenge. It's kind of been brewing. A lot of people have been talking about it. Will Stenhouse finally exact revenge on Hocevar? Both are kind of on the bubble, but both of them move further back this week, not just because of the win, but neither one of them had particularly good days. Will Stenhouse finally exact his revenge? He's certainly threatening it. I'm interested to see. And then, unfortunately, even more Hocevar drama. In some ways, and I don't think it would have anyway, but, obviously he's a young guy, but you have to be smart. I love the fact that he does these live streams, that he's on iRacing. I think it's fun. I don't think it's something really any other driver does. I think a lot of the younger generation probably likes watching Hocevar and enjoys that he does some of this stuff. He's funny, right? Understands that element of social media, but you can't say, and you got to be smart with what you're saying. And he was not, especially when NASCAR's mission is to try and make the sport more global and attract new fans. That's going against that mission. I was talking about new sponsors. He has a new sponsor on his car for the Mexico City race, and Yeah, not a good look for him. He wrote a pretty good apology that seemed to me it was more than it went a little bit above and beyond. I would say what most sports apologies for that kind of thing are. NASCAR's not going to penalize him, and again, I don't think they should have. But he does have some penalties, a financial fine, some training and stuff, and all of that is probably fair. Whether you agree with him or not, or whether you think it's his right to say what he wants, or however you feel about Mexico City, I'm not here to judge that. Have your own feelings and beliefs. All I'm going to say is when you are in the spotlight and you are in the position of Carson Hocevar, and all the scenario and stuff, you do have to have an extra level of carefulness. You do have to be smarter than that, and he was not. Remember, all of you guys at home that are on Twitter or talking to your buddies, you don't have that same level of carefulness that you have to watch when talking about other places and talking about other people. These drivers do, especially with all the sponsors that get involved. So keep that in mind, even if you didn't like it. At the very minimum, you cannot deny that is a very important element of being a NASCAR driver. All right, moving on. Does the playoff format need change? I've said before the season, I think it does. Listen, yes. On one hand, there's this thing in sports where you just have to make the playoffs, and then it doesn't matter what seed you are. But motorsports isn't like other sports, so why should we model ourselves after that? Last year, I think, should have been the nail in the coffin, the fact that Joey Logano had the worst season of a NASCAR champion ever and had awful finishes and really struggled most of the year, won one race, and then just found a way to keep advancing. He's a very good driver. I don't care what anybody says. I don't think that championship was earned. I know all the drivers are going to tell you, hey, we know what the system is going into it, and we have to race to the system, and all that stuff is true. But at some point, there has to be a cutoff. Like, I understand if you win a race and you're like 20th in points, yeah, that makes sense over somebody who's 16th in points. I understand not saying it's the top 16 guys on points, because maybe the top 16 guys on points all aren't capable of winning a race. But so say it's top 20, top 22 guys in points, and if you win a race, even that makes sense. But somebody who's 30th in points, who's really in the sport because of his road course prowess, Shane Van Gisbergen, the best, most consistent road course racer, I would say, has the most talent. He is lacking so much on so many of the ovals. The first round of the playoffs, there's no road courses, and he has to beat guys who grew up doing that, and I don't think that that's fair, and I don't think it makes sense, and I don't think they're ever getting rid of this playoff format, because if they were, last year when Joey Logano won would have been the final straw, and it should have been the final straw. And here's the element what people aren't talking about. Let's say, right, there's still what, 3 or 4 road course races plus Atlanta plus Daytona. So those are 5 races where 3 of which are road course ringer who's at the back of points can win, and 2 mayhem races in the draft where somebody who's outside the top 20 in points can win a race and lock themselves in the playoffs. Yes, it sometimes creates special moments, but there's no reason why somebody that far back in points should have any right to be in the playoffs. To me, what is more impressive over the course of the regular season is saying, oh, this driver doesn't have any wins, but he has the 3rd most top 10s. He has stage points. He's at the front every race. He has speed every race and can consistently compete on a week in and week out basis on speed. Okay? That to me is more impressive than somebody who wins one race or is really good on one type of track and then is in the 30s every other week or the back end of the 20s, and your average finish is outside the 20. Is outside 20, your average finish is like 25th, and you're running in the back, but you win one race because you're really good at that discipline. Gosh, maybe even 2 races because you're good at that discipline. If you win 2 races and you're still not top 20 in points, that should say something. Now, I know he hasn't won 2. I'm just saying if that's a possibility, but if you win 1 race and you're only 30th in points, what does that say, right? To me, it is harder. And you want to keep, if people want to make this, oh, well, it's a sport, and we're trying to make it more like other sports. Okay. Does the 30th place team get in? In fact, in all of the North American sports leagues, at most 16 teams make the playoffs, right? It's not like a team. I'm trying to think of like a good way to say this. It's like saying, Oh, the Dallas Cowboys finished 5-12 and are 10th out of 12 teams, or 13th out of 16 teams in the NFC, and they only have 5 wins. But in early November, they beat a team by 100 points, so therefore they're in the playoffs. Does that make any sense to you? It doesn't, and it shouldn't. And this playoff system, while I'm not against the winning you're in, we have to put a points threshold that is not so far back. We have to force guys that are competitive every single week and have a wide array of skill set and are consistent to be in the playoffs. And at the end of the day, that's not what this system does. And the other thing people don't want to talk about, is the charter system and why this changes the charter system. Now, and I think this is secretly why NASCAR likes it, because it helps spread the money around. But now you're going to have guys who are super fast on all of 8 to 10 tracks, maybe, which I guess is a significant portion. And then you're going to have guys that are super fast on a select few hands. But you know what? This guy who has an average finish of 15 or 16, who can point his way into the playoffs, should be valued. These guys that come up through through racing ovals, through the dirt track, through modifieds and all this stuff, should have a lane to make it in NASCAR. And all this is going to do is push some of those guys that aren't the Kyle Larsons, that aren't the Chase Elliott's, that aren't the Christopher Bells, that aren't the Denny Hamlins out. You're going to lose a lot of these middle to upper tier drivers that they can put together really good careers where they win quite a few races over the course of a decade. It's going to push those people out, and it's going to bring in road course ringers from other series, road course ringers from this. They're going to teach them how to super speedway race, and then that's all. And you know what? They're going to win, and they're going to get into the playoffs. And that's going to mess up teams financially, because now you have teams that arguably don't deserve to be in the playoffs that make the playoffs and get money for their charter that is more than teams who outperform them 90% of the season because they didn't make the playoffs. Let's keep on theorizing here, okay? I have something I want to put out there. Let's say Chase Elliott, who is currently right now 5th in regular season points, or no, 4th, sorry, 4th in regular season points in NASCAR's most popular driver. Let's say he doesn't get a win before the playoffs. All right, then you go to these 3 road course races. AJ Allmendinger, who's like 18th in points right now, I think 19th, right around there, wins a race. You have Michael McDowell, who's has been close on points, but I think is again behind the cut line, wins a race. And then who's another road course ringer that isn't currently in the playoffs? There might not be one. Okay, and then so maybe that's won by a normal favorite, and then you have 2 wild card winners like Ricky Stenhouse and Todd Gilliland win at Atlanta and Daytona, and now, hypothetically speaking, that would push Tyler Reddick and Chase Elliott, one of the 2 of them, out of the playoffs when they're both top 7 in points and have been top 5 or 6 in points most of the season. Is that not an insane solution? And they're both very popular drivers. I'm just going to say, okay, I know I just laid out a lot, and I need to get going to keep this episode short. Sorry, I didn't mean for that rant to be that long, but I think this playoff system is a sham, and it needs to change, and I don't think everybody understands the entire piece of the argument all the way to charter money. It needs to change. I'm not saying it needs to be drastic. I'm not even saying we need to go back to the Chase or to the old school Winston Cup. I'm just trying to say something needs to change because nobody that's 30th in points should have any right to race for a championship. Plain and simple. Who is the next new winner in the NASCAR series? And I don't mean first-time winner, or maybe I do, but you got big names who were high in points, like the aforementioned Chase Elliott and Tyler Reddick have not won a race yet. Bubba Wallace is having a good season, hasn't won. Can Chase Briscoe find victory lane? Kyle Busch hasn't won a race in forever. Can he still do that? Who's going to be the next new winner? And I can tell you what, the 2 guys I just mentioned, Chase Elliott and Tyler Reddick, you're going to see later, both of them could very well be the next driver to win. And will there be 16 or more drivers to win a regular season race? There's so far been 10, like I said, 3 road courses, 2 drafting tracks, a plethora of other kind of tracks. There's guys that have had speed at the front that haven't won races. Hocevar, Elliott, Reddick, Bubba Wallace, Alex Bowman, Chase Briscoe. That's 7 right there that have had race winning speed at different occasions this year. Not to mention somebody like Michael McDowell, who's really fast at road courses. Chris Buescher's really fast at road courses, or road courses and super speedways, right? The front row guys are fast at speedways. That's already 10 to 12 drivers that could have 1 or 2 or 3 opportunities at minimum to win a race. So will this finally be the year that there are 16 individual drivers? Maybe so. It's still going to be really, really hard. I think that's really, really difficult to get. All I'm going to say is that it's not impossible. And boy, that could really, really make the playoffs interesting. All right. Moving on here. History at Pocono. The only 3 winners in next gen: Chase Elliott, Denny Hamlin, Ryan Blaney. But this is going to be the first Pocono race not held in July. Best average finish: Tyler Reddick at 3.3. He has back-to-back runner-up finishes. I keep on mentioning Tyler Reddick's name at some of these tracks and how good he's been in the next gen. Eventually, I feel like 23XI has got to bring the speed they're used to and win a race, right? I mean, man, I feel like everybody's always like, man, Tyler Reddick's really good, and he has been, but then they lack something or something misclicks. Eventually, Reddick's going to win a race. It could be this weekend. Chase Elliott, 6.7 right there. I said that those two could very well win their first race of the season. They're expected to win once, if not multiple times a year. I'd be looking at both of these guys. Reddick has 2 seconds and has a 3.3 average. Chase Elliott has one here in the next gen and has the second best average finish. Christopher Bell, Bubba Wallace, William Byron there as the last 3. Christopher Bell's always the threat. Bubba Wallace, he's heating back up. Don't look now. He had a little lull, but he's heating back up. And then William Byron, who's fast on a lot of different tracks, one of the best drivers in the sport. And as you can see, I added Martin Truex. He's raced at all 3 races at Pocono because this is his first year of retirement. 6.0 average finish, which would be second amongst average drivers. Can that team bring speed, and can Chase Briscoe run this track as fast as his predecessor did with the same team? Most top 5s, Tyler Reddick and Denny Hamlin are tied with 2. Denny Hamlin, remember, the 2 races, he has a race where he had a big wreck and finished at the very, very back of the pack in 35th. But the 2 races he hasn't wrecked, top 5, including a win. And then 9 drivers have 1 top 5. Harvick and Truex are also on this list, but again, they're both retired. And then the other 9 are Elliott, Suarez, Blaney, Logano, Bell, Byron, Larson, Bowman, and Ty Gibbs. Most top 10s. There is 2 active drivers, 3 drivers technically tied with the most top 10s, finishing top 10 there all 3 races. Tyler Reddick, Chase Elliott, and Martin Truex Jr., and then 4 drivers tied at 2: Denny Hamlin, Christopher Bell, Eric Jones, and Bubba Wallace. Which means if you are counting this in the next gen, Toyota has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of the 7 drivers that have the most top 10s. Maybe this is looking and shaping up to be a really big weekend for Toyota, and I think Toyota would enjoy that, help some of their drivers near the playoff cut line and things of that nature. Favorites to win Pocono. Speaking of Toyotas, Joe Gibbs Racing on top of Hendrick. That rarely happens, but I have it this week. Hendrick is still going to be fast. Chase Elliott's fast here. Bowman's fast here. But Joe Gibbs Racing, I think, is the slight favorite. Bell, Hamlin have been fast here. Gibbs has been really fast here. And the 19 team has been fast here. They just need to hope Chase Briscoe can continue that. Hendrick Motorsports, they're never going to be outside the top 2. Maybe on super speeders, but Hendrick's always going to be near the top. They're the best team in NASCAR for a reason, even if people don't want to admit it. 23XI, both Bubba Wallace and Tyler Reddick are top 5 average finish guys. They both like this racetrack. No reason to see 23XI can't make it to victory lane. Team Penske won it here last year. I think Fords are funny at Pocono. I feel like they're either hitting or they're not. Team Penske is one of the best teams in NASCAR. And then I have RFK here. There really isn't a 5th team that stands out to me, but Brad Keselowski seems like he has some pretty consistent speed here. And Chris Buescher is hungry for that first win and has some momentum building now. So I figured I'd put RFK in that 5th spot. Also, it's usually between like RFK and Trackhouse, but Ross Chastain has 2 DNFs here. And I think eventually that's going to change. And this could be the week because he's run up front a lot. I mean, you have that famous incident where Denny kind of wrecked him. So maybe this is the year Ross Chastain figures it out. But in but I feel more confident in RFK as a team than Trackhouse at Pocono. All right, driver rankings to win this week. Denny Hamlin welcoming in a new baby. Was missed last week. Maybe a week to rest will be good for him. Maybe it'll be bad, but Denny Hamlin, I think, is the best driver at Pocono in the next gen. Favorite to win this week, followed by Chase Elliott and Tyler Reddick. I've said plenty about them. I think it's self-explanatory why they're there, and they both need a win desperately. Kyle Larson, commonly known as the best driver in the sport for a reason. I look at Kyle Larson, maybe hasn't had some of the most obvious successes, these guys in front of him, but he's still top 5. Christopher Bell has threatened for a win here before. Pretty good on this track, has a good average finish. Toyota's good here. Christopher Bell 5th, William Byron 6th, has some good runs here. Again, top 5 in average finish, one of the series best drivers. He's always going to be near the top of the list at tracks like this. Ty Gibbs, maybe not used to seeing him up here. Ty Gibbs, really fast at Pocono the last couple years. I think he seems to like this track. I'm very interested to see if Ty Gibbs can continue bringing the speed he has the last couple weeks. I don't know if he can point his way in, but he might be able to finally get that first win. Ryan Blaney won this race last year. He's one of the most consistent cars when it comes to bringing speed every week. I like to see Ryan Blaney battling for a top 10. Maybe not win, but top 10. Bubba Wallace, another guy that's historically good here in a Toyota. Bubba Wallace, big threat this week. And Joey Logano has been competitive at Pocono, doesn't dislike this track at all. It's really a matter to me is Ford going to be fast this week? Because sometimes they're not at Pocono in the next gen. Sometimes they are. I think it's kind of a mixed bag. Moving on to my power rankings, and that's right, everybody. You finally can see it. I finally did it. I finally color-coded power rankings. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through power rankings and then very quickly, and then I am going to tell you what the colors mean. Christopher Bell, finally somebody to throw William Byron from first. William Byron didn't have a bad race, but he didn't have a great one either. Christopher Bell was arguably the second best car on the track last week, continuing to collect points. Christopher Bell also had a good week the week before. Christopher Bell looks like he's going through another hot streak. I think Christopher Bell is the number one driver in the power rankings, followed by William Byron. Still has the regular season points lead. Didn't have an awful week, just had an okay week. But I think Christopher Bell's driving a little bit better and is still good enough on points. And Christopher Bell's a little bit better at Pocono. Christopher Bell over William Byron. Kyle Larson at third, just because I don't think there's anybody really challenging him. I have had kind of Denny Hamlin, Kyle Larson, William Byron, and Christopher Bell as my top 4. And I still do believe that. But Denny Hamlin had a slip because he didn't race last week. And if you don't race, you're going to get penalized, especially when somebody like Chase Elliott has as good of a weekend as he does. So their Hendrick drivers are taking the 2, 3, and 4 spots. Denny Hamlin down to 5th. Again, not a lot to say. Ryan Blaney, hung around at the got some good stage points, had a top 15 finish, kind of did what he had to do point-wise. I feel like Ryan Blaney doesn't always have, just an average solid day. I feel like he's either up front and stays up front, or goes to the back, goes to the front, or wrecks, right? Like there's not really, and I think this was just one of the few just all-around solid days he had. Good points day for him. And then Tyler Reddick, somebody who's usually really fast on road courses, has 3 road course wins in the next gen, really struggled this week to really break the top 20. Not a great week from him. Still doing okay on points. But yeah, just not a great week for him. Bubba Wallace had a good finish, a good third stage where he drove through the field. He is, I believe, 3 or 4 spots above the cut line. He's what I call the first driver that's not the first place of the uncomfortable drivers. So what I mean by that is, and in a couple of weeks here, I'll start showing the playoff standings, is like I said, Reddick and Elliott are both over 100 points good on the cut line of the guys who have not won a race. Out of the guys who are currently in the playoffs on points that are close, Bubba Wallace has the most guys in between him and the cut line. So Bubba's in a good spot. If you're not Chase Elliott or Tyler Reddick, I would start getting very concerned about pointing my way in because of the amount of chaos that has the potential to happen. Ross Chastain has won a race. had a bad finish, kind of was running and showed some speed, was kind of running top 10. Definitely had an interesting last stage with getting spun and a lot of guys having beef with him. We know how Chase Briscoe felt about Ross Chastain. Ross Chastain still found a way to a decent finish. Chase Briscoe, just mentioned him, had some beef with Ross Chastain. Briscoe was fast in one of the practice in for the first practice. And I was like, man, is he about to get another pole? Because he laid down a super fast lap. He did not get another pole. Got involved. He was running well, made up some spots, and then got involved in that Kyle Busch wreck. Excuse me. Stayed a lap down, and then they thought they were on the lead lap, stayed a lap down, and then I think it was an impressive drive. They didn't get stage points, but they are going to get 7th place points. It was a good drive for Briscoe to get a top 10. They still aren't getting stage points due to stupid mistakes and things outside of their control, but it was a good run for Briscoe. And he, I think, had top 5 speed just because of the aforementioned issues. Couldn't get there. Chase Briscoe back into the top 10. Chris Buescher with another top 10 on a road course. A solid run, a good points day for Buescher. Another guy that is good on points to the cut line. Alex Bowman with a top 5, much needed after all the struggles, putting them that, killing them in points, going from top 10 to now I think Bowman is 14th or 13th. They desperately needed a week like this week, and the 48 team did. And the 48 team got it. Joey Logano, he is locked into the playoffs on wins. Not a great week, but I don't think Joey Logano's here to win brand new road courses. Ryan Preece had more, I don't think got the finish he deserved, but that's what happens when you make mistakes. Ryan Preece brought some speed, still good on points. He's the last car good on making the playoff on points. Still not a great spot to be. He does have a slight cushion. 20-something points is a decent cushion in NASCAR. But one bad week could put you right back to the single digits or on the wrong side. Cindric, I think, had a better first half than second half. Think he should have finished better. He's supposed to be a good road course racer. He had some speed, and then, the race kind of just got jumbled up with a lot of things. I think it was impressive the fact he didn't move to wets and didn't completely wipe out when most of the other field was on wet tires and he was on dry. Mike McDowell, a phenomenal day, making up points on the cut line. Maybe he can win a road course race and get into the playoffs for the second time in his career. AJ Allmendinger, another good rebounding job to get a top 15 finish. I think that team probably wanted a little bit more with the playoff point situation. Kyle Busch, awful day, wrecking just 7 laps in, and his point situation after looking good is looking very bleak. A lot of guys passed him on points, and Shane Van Gisbergen won, meaning another person is locked in ahead of him. Shane Van Gisbergen, 19th. You got to have somebody in the top 20 after they won a race. He's still 30th in points. But I think going into the playoffs with 2 drafting tracks, some road courses, I really think he can start pointing up. And I think that's what the team wants to do and get some momentum, maybe even get some stage wins for playoff points. And then Josh Berry, not expected to have a good week, and he didn't have a great week. But he is sitting there in 20th, locked into the playoffs. And just real quick, let me give you my color coding. Anybody in that dark green is what I call championship, surefire playoff contenders, guys who should compete for a championship, the fastest teams in the sport. That's my top 7. Anybody in yellow are guys that I think are the second tier, guys that should make the playoffs, should be perennial playoff contenders, maybe championship contenders if they get hot, but I don't think they've been consistent enough. But that yellow category are still good drivers that are all playoff worthy and should make the playoffs every year. Definitely threats to win races. Joey Logano is in a tier by himself. That blue color that you see for Joey Logano. Joey Logano can win a championship any year. He showed that last year under this playoff format. But I don't think he has the consistent speed of those top guys, but he's still a 3-time champion twice in the last 3 years under this format. Joey Logano is either really good or really bad, it feels like, in the next gen. So he's kind of the wild card that could either... He is locked into the playoffs with a win, but historically, he's the wild card that's either going to win the championship or go out first round. The drivers highlighted in red are drivers that are playoff hopefuls. They're bubble guys. Not all of them are going to make it. Some of them might. But these guys are just trying to make the playoffs this year. McDowell's only made it once. I don't know if Allmendinger ever has. He certainly hasn't in recent NASCAR history. Kyle Busch used to be a force of the sport. Missed the playoffs last year. He's not going to miss them 2 years in a row, right? Well, it might be probable. But these guys in red are guys that, maybe haven't showed race winning speed most of the year, maybe a track or two at best, but they're still having solid enough years where they want to make the playoffs. Again, you make the playoffs, you get more money from NASCAR's charter system, and then every round you make it through the playoffs, you get more and more money. So it's very important to make playoffs, and these guys are hoping to. Priest has never made the playoffs, right? So it would be a big thing for these teams, especially some of the smaller ones, to find themselves in the playoffs. None of the guys in the red can win a championship. Their absolute ceiling, I think, is making it through one round of the playoffs. But it is still a possibility. They're not back markers by any stretch of the imagination. They're just playoff hopefuls. And that's kind of where I have them in that third tier. And then the drivers in light green are guys that have locked themselves into the playoffs but aren't a threat. Cindric, Van Gisbergen, and Barry, all of them have won a race, something only 7 other drivers have done this season. However, none of them are championship contenders, in my opinion. And I know Cindric drives for Penske, who's won the last 3 championships, but Cindric, to me, is not a legitimate playoff contender, just like the other 2 are not. They're guys, again, locked into the playoffs. They're going to be in the playoffs, and that's good for them. But kind of like the guys in red, maybe at best make it through one round, if any rounds at all. Not serious contenders, but they've won the all-important race. And here's actually a fun fact, kind of relates to what I was ranting about earlier. The 5 guys in yellow are all higher in points than the 3 guys in light green, meaning if it was just a flat-out point system, the 5 guys in yellow would all be in the playoffs over the 3 guys in light green. And Cindric is the only one of those guys that is top 16 in points and making the playoffs without winning a race. That's all I have for you guys today. Please like, comment, and subscribe. It helps me so much as a creator. Do that for all of your creators that you enjoy to watch, that you like to watch. Today, I want you to comment your feelings about NASCAR's playoff system. Maybe you're new and you like it. Maybe you're old and you don't like it. Maybe you think it has potential but needs to be ironed out. I went on a long rant about it today. That's kind of was the theme for a lot of today's episode. So let me know in the comments how you feel, whether you're for it or against it. I'm not going to judge. Can't guarantee other people won't, but let me hear it in the comments below. Not a lot of sports on right now, so there's no reason for you not to turn on NASCAR. College World Series is going on. If you're a baseball fan, there's all MLB is going on. Some big soccer events or football for people who, most of the world. But make sure you turn on NASCAR, the Tricky Triangle, the only triangle course NASCAR races, and might be one of the very few, if only one in the world, up in Pennsylvania in the Poconos. Please, or thank you for taking time out of your days, weeks, and lives for listening. Please take care of yourself. Take care of your family. Stay safe out there. Peace out.